I think we're live here.
Are we live?
So what presentations did you record? You record them just for practice in grad school?
No, during COVID we didn't travel, and so I made a bunch of YouTube videos. And they're
that's right.
Yeah, I used a Scarlett.
Really?
No micro. Oh no, I had a microphone and I put a sock over it. Yeah, I think a couple of them I just recorded on my computer
From the bedroom?
from my bedroom.
That's funny.
Yeah, you can see me in the top corner, just like in my bedroom. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Just like giving a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, because I did one conference during COVID remotely where I think we just got sorted into like different virtual Zoom rooms, and I presented to whatever professors were giving me the time of day on the Zoom call.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny. But
yeah, I think I've probably topped top 50 views on those, so that's kind of sweet.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, let's I'm gonna get into this here. So
for the folks at home, I've never been interviewed before, so this is cool.
have you recorded yourself singing for music stuff before?
Yeah, I've recorded myself playing music, and I've recorded myself giving those presentations, but I think that's it. I have been interviewed by Boston.com asking my opinion on if rents are too high. So
What was the answer on that?
I was like, yeah, probably. And then I was in an article. Yeah. They just quoted me, just like cherry picked. Like he said, yes, he thinks rents are too high. And that's it.
That's also a tough one to give an opinion on, because like if you're a young person, what do you, there's no special insight you're going to have as to like why rents are high. You're not going to comment on the macroeconomic factors of Boston.
No. Yeah. I was like, I don't know. I'm just like like living in like a nice area of Boston. Like, yeah, that is my opinion. I think I don't like how every paycheck I made just goes to my landlord, but I'm doing fine. Like, yeah, this is definitely more relevant for other people on the planet than me, but I'll throw my 2 cents in there. Yeah. Like,
yes,
it's high.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. So I have Marshall with me today. I feel really lucky that I've been able to spend so much of my young adult life with Marshall. We technically went to high school, college, and graduate school together.
Not technically. We did.
2 years apart, so a couple years of overlap at each location. Studied basically the exact same things for a lot of those courses. Took a lot of the same courses, did a lot of similar research, but our research topics, at least in graduate school, diverged a fair amount within our little niche that we had. So I'm going to talk to Marshall today about his academic background, go through some of his research specifically, learn more about his interests and where he wants to go in the future.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it?
Oh yeah, let's rock and roll. This is great.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, first thing I want to hear about is a little bit about your academic background. We can start maybe with the other people I've done. I'd like to start kind of mid to late high school and how you chose what college degree to pursue from there. Yeah,
I think I was really prepared for college my junior year of high school. It was probably my best academic year, and then my preparedness dropped pretty quickly my senior year. So I think the actual selection of my school was not very conscious, which I regret. Like, I wish I had done a more rigorous analysis and exploration of my options. But yeah, I got into a couple schools and BC was the best, and I was like, all right, that sounds great. Like, I'll just go there. It's super lame. Like, I now feel that I make decisions a little more consciously, and that one, if I'm being objective on this podcast, was not. I just luck of the draw. So I'm really blessed. I liked the school a lot. It like worked out pretty well, but I wouldn't say I was a mastermind of like the path that I went on. I just kind of like got into the school and was like, all right, this sounds good enough.
Did you apply to other schools? How did you even pick the ones?
Yeah, I applied to a bunch of schools. I don't know. I like mostly by geography. I didn't really know the best way that you're supposed to like make decisions at that time, which is a class that I would probably add to high school curriculums, just like making decisions, like make a little spreadsheet, compare and contrast stuff. I applied to like a school. I applied to like Wash U in St. Louis, went out there. It was cool for like no particular reason. It's just like a highly ranked school, and I thought St. Louis would be cool, and it was. So I went there for like 2 days. I applied to Tulane, which is also in a city that I thought was cool. Applied to Franklin and Marshall, which is just some random school in Pennsylvania that I thought would be interesting and smaller and a little more rural, which I actually do think I would have liked that, which I don't think a lot of people like that vibe.
Yeah, you really like the outdoors.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I would have done really. I wish I had applied to like Colby and Bates in Maine. That's like a regret of mine. I think.
Yeah, I
really,
could see you well up there.
I think
too.
I would have really liked that. I think I think like BC was kind of like a random school based on my psychological profile, but it ended up being fine. Like it was an awesome experience and definitely provided the best opportunities of any of the schools that I did get into. Like UMass, like any of those.
Yeah,
I applied there too. I probably would have gone to UMass if I didn't get into BC. I just would have gone to UMass Amherst.
I have to say, one thing I had no idea about in high school and even in college was that state schools have a ton of resources for the sciences.
Yeah.
The scientific research ends up, they're able to pool so many more resources, like across professors and across departments. There's so many more people you can work with and so much more like lab equipment available.
Yeah.
And research, like software licenses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what you want to do, I almost think a public school in some cases ends up being a better choice.
Yeah. UMass is a great school.
Yeah.
Ironically, like the main part of my graduate school research was just driven by UMass. Like,
Really?
yeah, like
Yeah,
their
that makes
database
sense.
they had collected for years because it was very relevant to the state, and they were funded by the Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
And so I just like piggybacked on that. It was
Cool.
because it was just a sick data set, and they had a ton of resources. So, yeah.
Cool. So if you can talk to me a little bit about college for a minute. So where did you start with that? What were some of the majors and classes that you started with at BC?
I came in as an environmental science major, and I really liked it a lot. Like I liked the department. I did a bunch of the prereqs. I knew it was kind of what I wanted to do. But I learned it was a Bachelor of Arts degree, and I wanted to take the hard science classes. After my freshman year, I had a cool job over the summer where we like built a lot of stuff, and I worked for the trail crew in the White Mountains, and I thought it was really fun and like wanted a little more hands-on experience. And it just so happens that BC has like a pretty good geology and geophysics applied curriculum. I had taken a class with one of them, but they weren't my advisors at the time, but I like went out of my way to be like, I want you to be my advisor, and this is what I'm going to do. And yeah, then I just did it. And so I switched formally my major, but all the prereqs like counted the year before. So that was nice.
You switched to geology at that point?
Yeah, my real degree is in geological sciences.
Yeah.
I like to say it's in geophysics because that was where my heart lay with John Ebel, legend.
Nice. That's a better way to put it, actually.
Yeah, yeah. That was like I like took every class with that in the title, and I don't know. Those were the field methods classes that I took and the data processing classes. So I don't think it was a formal concentration, but I would say that's sort of what I did. And I thought it was pretty cool. Got to meet a lot of cool people, and here we are.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I need to go back to something you said because you breezed over it, and I think that's one of the coolest things about you. After your freshman year of college?
It was,
you
yeah,
worked in the
freshman
White
year of
Mountains?
college. Yep.
Okay, I need you to talk about that for a little bit because I feel like that influenced like how easily you're able to like work in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Even through today.
Yeah. No, it was a sick job. The first 2 weeks of the season, we would what was called patrolling, and you would carry an axe around and like chop out trees. So we would do like 10-mile days. It was like 18. It was between like 12 and 18 people on the crew. We'd split up into 3 groups every day, 5 days a week. And we'd hike. Total was 386 miles, but it was spread between those 3 teams, and the teams would change every day. So you would do like 100 plus, or like a little over 100 miles in those 2 or 3 weeks, and you'd clean drains and chop out blowdowns. And then the rest of the summer was called Woods Weeks. I think there were technically like 10 of them or 11 of them, however many weeks were left in the summer after that. And you'd spike out, so we'd like pack in food and tents and stuff and set up camp, and then you just cook dinner out there and like live in a tent, and then you'd We mostly built rock staircases. I think that was like the glory project, but we do all sorts of stuff like wood water bars and rock water bars and bog bridges and just these backcountry structures that the organization knew how to make and had, in a lot of ways, pioneered. So we would just build those. My crew lead, my third year doing it, if anyone out there has hiked Mount Eisenhower, we were on the summit cone of Mount Eisenhower for 8 weeks, so above tree line. We camped 8 weeks. We camped 2 miles down. So I'd wake up in the morning. We'd cook breakfast. We'd leave camp at 7:30, or maybe we'd leave camp at 7:10. I don't remember when we would really leave. But yeah, you try to get to the summit before 7:30 or 7:45. So we'd be up there all day. It was sick. Yeah, we made that cairn. If anyone's seen the cairn, there was an old cairn that was huge and people loved it. We tore that cairn down because we were going to replace it. And we were we know that people are going to be pissed about it because everyone loves that cairn, but it was really falling apart. And we tore it down on a rainy day. We knew it was going to rain the next day. And so we were okay, this is when we'll do it. And we'll rebuild it in one day and it'll be beautiful and everyone will be more happy. And it was the only day ever on that crew where my entire crew got sick on the same day. We all had food poisoning or something. And it was a beautiful sunny day. And I guess it rained on the Monday, so no one was up there when we ripped it down. On Tuesday, we were going to rebuild it, and it was going to be a beautiful day, but we were going to be up there, and people would know that we were building it, but everyone went up that day. It was a beautiful sunny day. There were a ton of people on the summit, and they just thought someone had destroyed the cairn. We felt horrible. And then the next day we went up and we built this nice cairn in the rain and no one ever saw it. No one saw us building it or anything like that. And it was back. But yeah, I remember there was a great Facebook post on the 4,000 Footers Club. Just someone's destroyed the summit cairn of Mount Eisenhower.
Just roasting the trailblazers.
Yep. Yeah. Just what are they doing? This is blasphemy. And he was yeah, sorry. That was us.
Oh my God.
But I swear we built it back better.
That's wild.
Yep.
And
yep.
I've not done. Was it Mount Eisenhower? Is that the last?
Yeah, it's in the southern Prezzies.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I've not done that yet, but I did do. What was that? What's that ridge line?
Franconia, maybe.
Yeah, Franconia Ridge. I
Franconia.
did that one that I know you worked on at one point.
Yep, the
Which I was pretty
Falling
pumped
Waters Trail I was on a couple times, and Old
that's a really
Brattle
cool
Path. I've done a little work on both of those.
Nice.
Only a couple weeks here and there, but yeah, those get a ton of traffic and so a ton of work. They're actually redoing it right now, biggest. I don't know what the stat is, but it's I think it's the most money on one trail project.
The Franconia Ridge.
Yeah, it's they're rebuilding Old Brattle Path and I think Falling Waters Trail, with multiple teams and over $1 million or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah, from I think the Great American Outdoors Act.
Okay.
I believe some act that was signed into law in 2019 or so, and that money worked its way into the New Hampshire trail system. So they're redoing it right now. I know a bunch of the people on the cruise. I'm actually trying to organize a volunteer day with some alumni from the crew I was on in mid-July or something. We're waiting on one of those organizations to, they sort of run it. They're the pros. And so we're sort of waiting on them to give us a day. So I don't have a day yet. But yeah, huge project, super cool stuff. When I was on it, we did just small, that Eisenhower one was funded by the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. I don't know. We would pick up money. We didn't do any of the money stuff. We just were the crew. But we would just, sort of smaller organization. Appalachian Trail Conservancy is a huge organization. But this is a big, big project. I never really worked on anything like that. But some of the ones we'd be in the middle of nowhere, building weird stuff for some tiny organization. It was awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and I feel stop me and correct me if you feel differently about this, but I feel that's putting in all of that super draining work in the outdoors has led to part of why you're able to so easily now work in the outdoors and work in geotech and all the outdoor measurements that I know that you did during graduate school for weeks on end when you just be traveling the countryside of Massachusetts or Connecticut.
Yeah. It definitely is a similar mentality. I mean, choker was way harder, absolutely physically and mentally the hardest thing I've ever done. Not in its own way. In that particular, it was very challenging just to be wet all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Like you can't really make a living doing that, or it's really hard to make a living doing that. So real life's harder in its own way. So like on paper, I probably have a cushier job. Like it's not, the days that I work in the field are not near, like I'm not doing physical labor. Like I'm collecting data. It's not that hard. Like I'm not a welder or like an iron worker.
That's
like
fair.
those guys are doing, I would say that's more like trail crew. I'm out there in the rain with them, but I'm just like collecting samples and stuff like that.
That's true.
But it's similar. Yeah, it's definitely, that's why I am where I am, is doing drill crew. Like when I came back from that summer, it was that first week that I back to BC, like I was like, I want to do geophysics, because I was just like, I don't want to study these random things. Like I know there's a class where I can go and set out seismic lines, geophone lines, and swing a hammer and like measure some of these properties that we're going to actually use for like building a bridge or something like that. And so I was like, yeah, that's way cooler. That's what I want to do. So
Yeah. So
I was a coin flip. I was like, I didn't know what it entailed, but I was like, that sounds cooler. Let's try it. And I just had this crazy experience and I really liked it. So yeah, that definitely was a driver of where I went.
That's awesome. So I think that leads in nicely. Can you tell me a little bit more about that thesis project that you did in undergrad and how you picked that out, what that project entailed?
Yeah, man, that's wild. So ironically, from the conversation we just had, it wasn't my project that got me outside as an undergrad. It was CU Liu's, who's back in China, but she was a good friend of mine. She worked at Western Observatory. She was collecting shear wave velocity profile measurements around Boston. They were basically like mapping the near surface soils. I used her thesis in grad school. So that was swinging a hammer and collecting like seismic data with CU. So that was outdoors. We were like going around to different bridges and stuff in the area and measuring shear wave velocities of soils that were adjacent to the foundations of like bridge footings. My thesis project was a total desk project, hilariously. Like didn't get me out there, but I worked at Western Observatory, super cool institution at BC. They run the New England Seismic Network, which is like the network of seismometers in New England, and measure earthquakes, like just the small local events that happen, which, yeah, they happen like every day. Measurable ones probably every 2 or 3 days. Yeah, not feelable, but yeah, measurable ones every 2 or 3 days. And yeah, I did all the locations, which was just the grunt work. My advisor was the guy who had sort of like the mastermind system, and I would like pick the arrival times of the seismic signals, and arrival times, because of velocity of waves through rock, are proportional to space. You can basically just figure out where earthquakes are. So we'd locate the earthquakes. That was the grunt work at the institution. And then my thesis was, honestly, it was not good, to be totally honest. Like, I think the processing I did was really good. I think the writing was abysmal. Like I just like didn't know what I had just done. And I think we did do a cool thing, and I think the processing was good in real science, but I had no idea how to write one. Like, I passed that. You can read it and learn something from it. I'm glad. I would say always give the opportunity for people to try their first one and just be okay when it's not perfect, because, yeah, man, it is, like, not very inspiring. I will say I'm really proud of the processing on that project. Like, that was cool. Anyway, that project was in New Brunswick. There's a little town called McAdam. I believe there's a famous train station there. Like, I think if you look it up, it has this big, beautiful train station. I don't know. It's like Fredericton, I think. Fredericton. Apologies to all the Canadians out there if I'm mispronouncing that. It's like north of that city. And they have had this history of seismic activity immediately below the town. So like every 5 or 10 years, they'll have a swarm of earthquakes that will like break people's windows. Nothing like crazy. It's a town of like a few thousand people, I think. Maybe up to 20,000. I don't remember how big it is. But it's interesting. Like there's these swarms all over New England, and there's all these theories of like why they're caused. If it's just like popping of rebounding crust, or, you know, an area of weakness along an old ancient shear zone that's no longer active but might have weak zones in it. That was the theory that was the thesis. But the processing was like we had all these recordings of these earthquakes, but earthquake locations pretty uncertain from distant stations based on how you typically would locate them. But we did a different way of locating them. It's called double difference relative locations. It's neither here nor there for the sake of this podcast, but essentially it just improved the resolution of the locations so you could look at where they were in 3D space. And we basically ended up plotting out like 2 lines. Like there was a real pattern, like a statistically significant pattern. Where it got sort of fuzzy of like pushing theories is like those patterns lined up with like larger fault zones, which was the Nuremberg fault system, which is huge. That's like the Appalachian Mountains. And the other one, oh boy, the other one was orthogonal to it, and it comes out of the bay on the eastern border of Canada and Mexico, and I cannot remember what the name of that fault is called. But anyway,
Canada in the U.S.
Yeah, Canada and the U.S. and northern Maine and southern Canada on the far east side. I cannot remember the name of the bay, and that's the name of the fault. The processing was just locating these things in higher resolution space, and then looking at these old geologic maps and being like, oh yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. Like that's a plausible theory that it's part of this old fault system, and the rocks are a little bit weaker right below McAdam. Mm-hmm. But that's like hard to prove, you know. But yeah. I do think the data was real, which was cool. Like it didn't come out as a random. It didn't come out as like a random spattering of points, which it does if you don't. Which it does if you don't do this trick, this like way of increasing the resolution. But it's hard to then assign causality to that. That was what we did. Yeah. Like it was just like, okay, that's the theory. We're gonna go with it. We're gonna say it. Here's this cool processing. Here's here's like the geologic maps around here. Call it a day.
Sweet. Okay, so then do you feel like any of your undergraduate classes directly helped you with that thesis?
Yeah, I mean, I took geophysical data processing, which was literally what we did there. I will say though, the thing that helped me the most with that is I did a summer at Weston Observatory. I took a year off of trail crew and worked at Weston Observatory for the summer. And my advisor, who again, people have plus and minus, you know, I really liked him. I had a good experience with him, but he was just a guy who, you know, kind of knew how it worked. And he kind of just let me do whatever I wanted. And I spent that summer just processing data, like writing programs to look at it. And I just put in like a ton of hours. And that was like extremely fruitful. Like that was what I did all of grad school, that like I didn't have to learn on the fly because John Ebel just let me sit in a room for 8 hours a day, paid me a little bit, and I just and gave me a ton of data and and MATLAB, and I just like went to town. So that helped the most by far. I learned it from him in a class in geophysical data processing. We did it in a bunch of classes, but it was mostly just like, yeah, man, like here's a couple programs, like here's some data sets. I had to use it to locate earthquakes, so I was doing it every day, even though that was not creative work, but it was just like wax on, wax off, getting familiar with the programs.
I love that.
Yeah. Like I didn't know that I was getting good at something at the time, but like if every day you have to wake up and open MATLAB and like pick out like locations, like these locations or whatever arrival times, you get pretty good. So that was the most fruitful by far.
Did you start with MATLAB as far as programming goes?
Yeah. Just in geophysical data, that class, and then it was in that class I was terrible at it, which was fine. Like he was cool with it. Like it was like a really hard class. It was like a high level class that I had no business being in, and he just let me be in it and like would teach me how to do stuff and be like, oh, this kid doesn't even know how to open this. What is he doing here? But he never said that. He was just like, yeah, sure. Like I'll like help you out. I'll help you like add 2 numbers together on this interface. And then he was like, yeah, you want to come work? You want to like, I'll pay you. I don't remember. I definitely didn't get paid a lot, but it was awesome. Like he was like, yeah, I'll give you this. I got some money for some reason if you come out and locate earthquake for me. Great. So yeah, I just spent the summer at Weston Observatory. So I was probably better at just like learning it while I was out there because I had gone through the class, which like introduced me to it. It was not a gentle introduction though. It was only gentle because he would help me outside of the class, but I had no business being in that class at the
That's
time.
Awesome.
Yeah,
it was like a mix with graduate students kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. The class was like a high graduate level course. It was me and Parker, still a close friend of mine. I'm probably going to hang out with him tonight, to be honest. He was good at it. He was a math major. He like knew how to He like knew how to program and stuff like that. I just knew I wanted to do something practical and was like trying to force my major to conform to what I wanted. But he actually knew what he was doing. So he was in that class, though he was not a grad student. And there was one other guy. Oh, I don't remember his name. There was the three of us in there. There was literally three of us.
Three-person class?
Yeah, it was three of
That's
us and
funny.
John Ebel. And the other guy was like 40. So it was like
nice.
me and Parker and then this like 40-year-old grad student.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So then next up we have a graduate program. Did you have multiple options for graduate school? Did you have an idea what you even wanted to do beforehand? How'd you get roped into that?
This is actually probably a classic good podcasting story. I was at Weston Observatory and John Ebel was like, you should apply to grad school, or you can. Like, here's an option for you. Like, I'll help you out. Like, you've been helping around here. Like, I bet you'd be a good candidate. And also, he has an incentive too. Like, I worked with him all through grad school. He like
you
he
helped
wants
out with
his
papers.
He wants his grad students or his students in undergrad to go and be grad students. Like that's how
you want the people you work with to be successful.
Yeah, that's how
Rising
that's
tide.
how it's supposed to work.
Yeah,
it's supposed to work. So I was like, okay, sure. Like, why not? Parker was going to Tufts, so I knew of Tufts. I thought that I wanted to be a geotechnical engineer because I took a class with Alfredo Urzua. I don't know if you ever knew him, but he taught hydrogeology.
Yes. Yeah, I met him at Weston. I
don't
think
so he was like a Weston guy. He only taught a class once every 3 years so that he could stay in the library system. But he was the man. He went to MIT and he was a formal geotechnical engineer. John is a formal geophysicist. Like, he went to Caltech and studied seismology. And then, yeah, so Alfredo, I learned what a geotechnical engineer was. I was in that class with Parker. I knew Parker was going to Tufts. He got accepted, and so I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I could be an engineer even
was
though
Parker the year above you?
He was 1 year older than me. He is 1 year older than me. My brother is a civil engineer, so I knew what it was. And I was like, I think I want to do this. Like, this fits with me liking trail crew, and I have to squeeze my way into this world because I'm studying geology. Like, that's not what I am, but I want to be it. And like, it's too late. I'm not going to go back and start school again. Like, I'm just going to make it work. You only get one shot. What's the way I can force this? So I was studying for the GRE that summer in like July, and John caught me. Like, I was at Weston, like studying for the GRE. He's like, don't study for the GRE. I was like, why not?
Really?
And I was like, why not? He's like, because I'm going to write you a great letter of recommendation. This is probably old school. Like, this is not good advice. This is totally bad advice. It was just funny. Like, this old academic, like, in his day, this is totally what you should have done. So I just didn't study very much. I did study, like, because
I know you. You definitely studied.
Yeah, I did.
Don't lie.
But it was like a funny story. Just like, he was like, nope, you're doing research. Like,
That's
you got to
awesome.
be good at doing research. That's why you should be able to get in there. So that was funny. I only applied to Tufts. I wasn't 100% sure. And then I also applied to McPhail, which is where I currently work 6 years later. So that was my only choice.
So is either you're going to be Tufts graduate school or
that was it.
geotechnical engineering.
Yeah, so it was those two. That was it. I didn't apply to any other companies. They both said yes. I probably would have gone to McPhail, but Lori called me and said she would give me a stipend. So I was like, okay, let's do it.
That's something I've mentioned to a couple college students that have reached out to me as well for career advice. Is if you can get a graduate school to give you a stipend, you may need to ask for it, but a lot of schools have research available where you can do a thesis, do a paper, get a stipend.
Yeah,
and that's not only is it, of course, better to get some money, but it's also really, really good for your personal career development, I think.
Yeah. And you also want to, you got to sell yourself too. So like, I knew that John knew Lori, and John knew that he would want me to go and work with Lori because I would come back and work with him, which is exactly what I did. Again, that's a hindsight. I was masterminding the whole thing. That probably wasn't totally, like, I was still making it up, and you just have to make it up as you go. But I definitely went in. I emailed Lori and was like, I don't know. I went there and interviewed with all the professors and stuff in person, like, talk to people. I think that's good. Like, you definitely want to, like, get to know the actual people there. Because also they could have been jerks. So you're not applying to the homepage of the website of the program. You're applying to work with, like, a specific group of people.
That's a good point. Yeah. Look for any
everything
red
looks
flags.
good from their website, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. So tell me then about Tufts. What was that transition like for the first year or so?
Honestly, I felt like I felt pretty good in there. I stunk at writing. I didn't stink at writing. I think I was a good writer, but I didn't get how you were supposed to write about whatever. Like, I really liked, at the beginning of grad school, like, I really liked just, like, processing seismic data. This is the nerdiest thing I've ever said, but that's just what I did. Like, I just, like, I already knew how to do it. It was comfortable to me, but I didn't, like, try to claim what it meant, and it was definitely hard. So, yeah, I would say the processing for my master's thesis, again, was sick. Like, still super cool results, but I didn't put in enough effort to communicating it. Like, it's not very well communicated. Like, it's kind of just like, here's all this cool stuff I did, and that's, like, you're still not, like, doing anything. You're just being like, here's all this cool stuff I can do, but I'm not saying anything interesting about it. Anybody could do this, you know? Like, what did you find that was different? So I felt pretty ready to do the research. There was, like, really two of Lori's former grad students that I was like, I know what these people are doing. I would say both of them are drastically better communicators than I am, but, like, I know how to take a transfer function. And, like, if you're in this side of Lori's group, you need to know how to do that and like how to program that and know what it means. And I was like, I think I know what that means. And I still feel that way. So I'm confident in that ability. But yeah, I guess the classes were pretty hard. Like, I was just taking, like, grad level geotechnical engineering classes when you've only been a geology student, and you're like, yeah, I'm totally a poser, which is true, but it's fine. You know, it's just taking classes. I was learning so much.
Yeah.
And so that was a really cool experience. Cause yeah, I think, like, classes are so important. Even if you're, like, not getting a lot out of them, you just gain confidence in, if you use those tools in the future, you're just like, yeah, I'm like, I've seen this before. I didn't know how to do it, but, like, I know it exists. Like, now that I realize it's important, I know that what I need to learn. So yeah, those classes have been really valuable in my professional life. I definitely, I also got lucky. I felt like, I don't know, I just had someone there who, like, knew people, which was helpful too.
Yeah.
People are really, really important, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, people are super important. It's just like, yeah, I don't know.
I also think the people at Tufts, at least everyone I interacted with seemed like they really wanted things to go well, and they wanted things to be pushed forward in a positive direction.
And they wanted you to succeed.
And I think we were talking about this before it started, like, same sort of thing as having Lori as an advisor. I was picking out the flaws while I was in graduate school and being like, so-and-so said something that was slightly negative. And it's like, well, in comparison to the real world, what that person said was minuscule. What that person said was actually totally fine and, like, within the realm of being a pretty nice person.
Yeah.
So everyone at Tufts I interacted with was great. I was really happy with that.
I really, really liked them, liked the vibe there.
Yeah. What do you think was your favorite class in grad school?
Oh, it's digital signal processing for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
What was
I retook
that one
it. I retook it. It was the same. It was the same class as that geophysical data processing class, but I was a way more mature, like, capable person, and it was in the electrical engineering department, and so it was just doing signal processing in MATLAB, and the professor was the man. He played the tuba.
That's awesome.
He was a professional, and he just taught the class at night and just was clearly so good at his job. He would do all the programming assignments, and I was just really into it at the time, and I learned a ton. It was all applicable. Like, we would make figures that I had been looking at in papers for years, and so I was like, oh, now I know how they make these. I know the secret sauce. And yeah, I would say I was like a mid-tier student in that class. Those kids were sick at doing some of the electrical engineering students were sick at doing that stuff.
That must have been pretty heavy on math and physics, right?
I don't know. It's more like computer science, like, under the hood. Yeah, we didn't solve any, like, integrals in that class.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you had the tools programmed in, you know, so you just had to, like, it was like solving puzzles, but yeah, you have to know kind of what's going on, obviously.
Yeah. So I guess in hindsight, what math courses do you think have been really helpful to you throughout graduate school and early career versus which ones do you think you might have passed on if you were to go through that process again?
I don't know. I think it all kind of helps. Definitely take multivariable calc if you want to do stuff. Like that's like nothing crazy, and like it forces you to think about shapes, which are helpful everywhere, especially in engineering where you're working in real space. Probably like linear algebra.
You like linear?
I liked linear algebra a lot.
Nice.
I was not like, never forget that I was just a geology student. Like I had to take all these, but like I would say that helped a lot because like writing out matrices lets you figure out what a computer's doing a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1 million, the answer to your question is stats.
You liked stats a lot?
I didn't
It's been
like
really
stats,
helpful.
but like knowing, you don't have to be good at like calculating out 95% confidence intervals or like knowing what Pareto distributions are, but thinking probabilistically is like a really rare trait, and like every single organization in the world is operating under uncertainty, and just like being able to accept that and like potentially be good enough to like try to quantify it is like a really powerful way of thinking, and I am a massive advocate. So I took a ton of those. That was Laurie's like angle. So like we were definitely we were of that like philosophy. I took a lot of those classes and TA'd a couple stats classes.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So that was another thing that I mentioned to a college student who reached out to me recently. He was kind of on the fence of whether or not he was going to take statistics courses. And I was like, dude, every graduate program, every company needs people who do statistics, and very few people are comfortable enough to like work with it even on a basic level. Like one of the interview questions for my company was somebody just asked me, what is a normal distribution? And being in the research that we did, like that was a pretty easy question to answer. But I remember them saying like most people don't get that. People even coming out of graduate school programs just haven't looked at a normal distribution before.
Yeah.
So having just like a base understanding of statistics seems like it's such a leg up.
And even if you don't know what a normal distribution is, if you provide an answer with a range of numbers, you're intuitively doing statistics, and you're accepting the fact that there are multiple possible variables that you can't control, but there's a countable range of possible options. Mm-hmm. Not countable, it's an infinite range, but you're more confident in some of that range. And so you're like, all right, like that's, in my opinion, insanely valuable. Mm-hmm. Insanely valuable. Mm-hmm. We can there's a possible range of numbers. Like this isn't going to be infinite. Therefore, like we can know something. What people are afraid of is everyone in the world expects you to give a single answer. Mm-hmm. And so like that's a reasonable fear. Like if you give a single answer and you say this is my answer, it's obviously not going to be right because it's an uncertain process. Mm-hmm. You can get in trouble, like the project can go way off course because your estimate was wrong. But I still think it's helpful if you try to like lock some things in that you do know, assign some uncertainty to things that you don't know, come up with a decent model, turn the crank, and like estimate a range of possible values. Like maybe what really happens out there is way over. That would look bad on us. I'd feel pretty bad. But I would learn something from that. Like we tried, here are the assumptions we made. Here's what happened. Like, here's what ended up happening. You were wrong about the surface. You were wrong about this. Yeah. But, like, you can refine that in the future, but that requires you to, like, think statistically and accept that there's a countable range that you can try to understand, but anything's possible.
Sweet. No, I like that perspective a lot.